Welcome to The Real Math of Business with Alena Bennett, where you, plus this podcast, equals better decisions. I'm Alena Bennett, speaker, author, and leadership expert. I work with chief executive officers and chief financial officers really to help them create universally investable companies where people serve people and the math just works. This week, I'm chatting to my great friend, Stacey Fisher, but first, here is my thought-provoking question. Now, as we approach the end of the year, there is a lot of reflection happening with people, including myself, and a lot of kind of planning and daydreaming, which I think is a really important step in between the reflection and the planning, is a bit of daydreaming. One of the things that I have realized as part of my reflection, daydreaming and planning is I love a new thing. I love a shiny toy. And if I think about, there's a great, I don't know if you guys watch The Rookie, but me and my family binged The Rookie. And there is this one episode where Lucy Chen says, talks about what journals represent to her. And she says journals or diaries, I forget which term she used, represent what's possible for my perfect life. And I've got to say, that really resonated with me. And I don't think that's particularly a good thing, but hey, here we are. So as we approach 2026, I don't know if this has happened to you, but in my inbox, I'm constantly getting, here's the new thing, this is going to set you up for a great 2026. And, here's the course you need to do and all the rest of it. And I've gone, oh, that sounds really exciting. And then I've had to calm myself down. And that's been very, very hard at times, I will tell you that much, because sometimes these are the people that I admire most on the global stage. But it got me thinking, in all reality, I can't do all of the things, and actually I don't need all of the things, and I don't need all of the people. So one of the things that I have committed to my personal advisory board, my group of people around me that keep me accountable and motivate me and all the rest of it, is I will be very intentional about who I learn from for 2026, really focused on what do I need and who do I need to learn from. And I've got to say, it is not 20 people, it is not 10 people, and it's probably not even 5 people. And I'm not talking about informal mentors or people that inspire you. I'm talking about intentional investment in money, time, and energy into learning a skill, attribute, or methodology. So that is a commitment that I have made to my personal advisory board, is that I am going to share with them who I am going to learn from in order to achieve my 2026 goals. So my thought-provoking question for you is, who do you need to learn from in 2026? And now to our chat with Stacey Fisher. All right. Well, it's an absolute pleasure to welcome one of my besties in the whole universe, what we collectively call our Staceypedia amongst our close circle of friends. It's a wonderful to welcome Stacey Fisher. Welcome, Stace.
Thanks for having me.
Now, I started off with a bit of an in-joke saying that we call you Staceypedia. And that is because you are, I'm guessing, and I don't know this for sure because I've not played this with you, but I am guessing that you are an absolute gun at Trivial Pursuit.
Yeah.
So I say
there is
that
barely a Wikipedia rabbit hole I have not disappeared down when I should be doing something else.
Yeah, really productively, and usually sleeping. So as I was getting ready for this podcast and thinking, gosh, this could be, and hopefully will be, a very fun conversation. I was reflecting on how long we've known each other, how we met, and how our relationship has developed over the years.
I'm interested to hear how you think we met.
Well,
do you remember the first time we met?
So I am guessing it's got something to do with preschool.
Yep.
I am guessing, I can't remember it has to be Mila actually, because Lani didn't go to that preschool. So it was our second children. So that would mean we've known each other for 10, 11 years.
Yeah.
About.
Yep.
Oh, we should celebrate our 10-year anniversary. I'm guessing you were sporting a bright red lip, which probably meant that I was terrified of you, because I was probably skulking in some, just got out of bed costume, or was wearing my corporate attire, rushing like a mad banshee. That's my guess.
Yeah. It was at a preschool end of year concert, and I already knew Cody but I didn't know you. And I turned around and you were all kind of suited and booted. And Mila and Max were jumping on the jumping castle in the driveway together. And I turned around and thought, that's an attractive lady.
Suited and booted, and then you met the real me. And I'm guessing actually that's what made you love me more.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
And look, vice versa. And I think this, and I think that's actually, if I reflect on our relationship, which is obviously not the intention of this conversation, but I think that probably sets a really nice tone between what our relationship does for me, at least, which not many can, and that is straddle very quickly kind of deep friendship and vulnerability. And, we can kind of go tracksuit to suit very quickly. Like we can be having a conversation about just the dumbest thing ever, personal rabbit hole, to let's get cracking on business.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. We often go from tracksuit to business suit in the one conversation and back again.
and back again. That's right. And then, you kind of go between coffee and glass of wine, depending on time of day.
Yeah.
To go with that, which is interesting given the sort of real math of business as the meta model that sits above that is duality, right? So maybe that's one of the things that really appeals to me about you and how your brain works, is that you are actually a bit of a walking, talking duality in terms of my relationship with you. And I really love that.
Yeah, me too.
Because quite often you will have a certain type of relationship with someone, it might be a professional relationship with someone, but you never really get personal. You have lots of personal relationships, which you talk nothing about business or work with. And sometimes when you try and do both with the same person, that can be really awkward.
Yeah. Or you only know someone from one part of your world and then, they can't really add much to your personal life or your business life or vice versa.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, isn't that interesting, just to reflect on that? So we've kind of done that very nicely. We've segued beautifully into the business side of things. And I think one of the reasons I was so excited to have this conversation with you is you've kind of done all of the things in the business landscape. You've done, you've been the corporate businesswoman, you've done the business owner and sold businesses previously. You've done the entrepreneur kind of thought leadership thing. You've seen all aspects of business, and obviously you've been a consumer as well and investor. I think we can go in lots of different places today. I guess what I thought I would do to start with is, well, I say that you're one of the smartest people I know, and that is because you always come back to the data. Always, like more than anyone I know, you always come back to the data. And so I thought, when we talk about the real math of business, the real math of business gets really real when you go to sell the business.
Yeah.
And you've done that multiple times, and you've also had to develop valuation models to do that. So I thought we'd start at the pointy end with respect to the numbers. And I'd love to hear that experience. Like, what is it like to sell a business? What did you need to what did you need to do? What did you need to prepare with respect to getting that over the line? Because I'm guessing it starts with the numbers, but I also assume that it's a little bit more than that.
Well, I've sort of straddled the entire business ecosystem in that I've worked for Fortune 500s. And when you're in FMCG, the marketing team owns the P&L, which is quite unusual. Often the business will set the targets and marketing have a budget, and they might have a target, but they've just kind of got to spend the budget and meet whatever target set for them. Whereas in FMCG, we go the other way. The marketing team builds the model from the base up, tells the business what we think we can make and what we need, and then we're responsible for delivering it. And that's why in a lot of businesses, they will typically pull their managing directors from the operations side, but in FMCG, they tend to pull their senior leadership from the marketing side because we have a background in data. And I think one of the big misconceptions about marketing is that it is fluffy and creative, and it's true in a lot of ways, but in reality, you are responsible for a number. So that's how I started building the business valuation. I built it, I ran a couple of models, built it from the bottom up. So a unit is worth this much, this is the profit, this is how many retailers we think we can get into, therefore this is the projection. And then kind of also from the bottom down, well, we need this much investment in order to do these things, and therefore the valuation kind of has to be this. And so I kind of did that two ways. The difference in angel investing, so our seed round was funded by angels, is that they're investing they're actually investing in the esoteric, the relationship between the founders, the energy that the founders bring to the business. They're actually investing as much in that as they are in the numbers. So whilst we pulled all these models together and presented those in the data pack, what they actually wanted to know was, were Lorraine and I going to stay the course? Were we going to stick it out through the tough bits? Were we resilient enough to stare down? And, that did end up, the absolute worst ended up happening to us in that we launched into the United States in March 2020.
Emma?
Yeah. So were we going to lose it and fall apart, or were we going to stay the course? And yeah, we stayed the course for years, dug our heels in through all of the changes he made to trading terms and all of those logistic challenges that, came up in 2021 post-COVID, and all of the sales environment changes during COVID. We stuck it out. And I think that's what the investors were looking for in the first instance. And I can see why. Now on reflection, I can see why when we were originally talking about pitching for money and when we were getting advice from the advisory board, they were very, very clear on the fact that the angels would be looking at us as much as the numbers.
So how do you get around the mindfuck, excuse my French, of having to put together a very objective slide deck on numbers, going, oh shit, this is still kind of an early idea. I'm suddenly playing with other people's money for the first time. Like, there's got to be a lot of personal emotion and fear that goes with that.
Yes.
To then stand in front of them, and I know you've been on Shark Tank before, so I'm not sure if it's similar, but I'm just kind of going, gosh, it's one thing to put yourself out there, but it's another thing to put yourself out there personally with all of your emotions and all of your baggage and all of your fears alongside a piece of paper or a slide deck that says, we're amazing and we're going to make millions of dollars. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, it was, to paraphrase you, a head fuck. We had to do a lot of internal work, particularly because we were women pitching to men on our own worth, our own confidence in the strength of the business and the strength of the pitch deck. And we were helped along a lot by our advisory board. So I can't understate the value of a really strong advisory board. And we deliberately selected individuals who we kind of took a skills-based approach to building the advisory board. We thought about what we needed and from whom, and then invited those people to be on our advisory board. And I think they did a lot of heavy lifting in holding our hands and making sure that we were confident and felt ready, because they'd all done what we'd done before and they could see the pathway from A to B. We couldn't. So yeah, we had to do a fair bit of internal work as well as the external work.
And that's really interesting, again, because if you're approaching people to be on your personal advisory board, you're not approaching them saying, I'm really nervous. Can you help me improve my self-confidence so I can go and ask people for money?
Oh no, we were. We were
Did you?
explicit. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We literally sat in coffee shops with people who we already had existing like
Yeah,
mentor
okay.
type relationships with, and said, oh, my dude, I am absolutely terrified. Please help me see the path from A to B and navigate that path. Please be my Mr. Miyagi, because
Mm,
I am little terrified Danny shaking in my boots,
interesting. And look, I guess if you're that open and vulnerable about what you actually want and need, you're going to get the right people, because the wrong
Yeah,
people will say no.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's
And I think they could see that. They could also see the strength of the business. So it's not like we didn't have track record,
yeah.
but yeah, we were
So
also,
tell me about what does the strength of the business mean? Like what do you mean when you say they could see the strength of the business?
well, they could see that we already had track record. They could interrogate our supply chain and our manufacturing standards and see that we were serious about bringing a quality product to market that we could sell, that we could expand our market, that we could straddle e-commerce and wholesale and make it work. So they didn't do it as a favor to us necessarily. They also knew that they were getting a percentage, because that's what we did on our advisory board, is we offered a percentage of a percentage of shares in exchange for being on the advisory board. So yeah, they wanted to help us. I think at the bottom line is it was a heart motivated decision, but I also think there was a head motivated decision as well. If they thought that the business had no value, they never would have joined the advisory board. They were also investors in the business as well, so they put their own money on the line.
And I guess you said that you chose them because they've done it before. They understand that there is a level of, yes, we want certainty, but we actually don't know what this is going to look like in the future.
Yep.
So they understand the level of risk
Yeah. Yeah.
that goes along with
Angel investors, particularly the kind of angel investors that we were working with, understand that it is high risk, high reward.
yeah, yeah.
If you want low risk, you invest in an EFT.
Okay, fast forward to when you made the decision to sell the business.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about what you did there in terms of building that, building that PowerPoint deck.
That was far more of this is where we're at right now. There was less vision, less these are the irons that we have in the fire that, potential customers, potential channels. It was very much, this is where we're operating. This is what the market is telling us. This is what the stock we have on hand. This is the size of our email lists and the value of the brand. And yeah, that was much more of a numbers based conversation, because they were buying an existing entity and then it was up to them to decide where they took it. So
So if we say that at the beginning, when you were going through your angel round, you were selling the future.
mm-hmm.
How would you then contrast? What were you selling you were selling the business, obviously, but
Yeah.
you kind of said, you were really just saying, this is where we're at now.
Mm-hmm.
Were you selling potential, or how would you characterize that? If you sell the future when you're asking for money,
Mm-hmm.
what's the difference?
I think we were selling We were also selling the future to the buyer, but we were selling a future that was far more reliant on their capacity and their current supply chain and their current
So, were
because
you?
they were adding our brand to their existing portfolio of brands. So their calculations were, okay, I have this many retailers. This is my wholesale list. This is your wholesale list. They weren't yet active in America, and we were able to kind of say, well, this is our wholesale list in America. So it was more of a kind of this is the status of the business. You decide to take it where you want, but
And I wonder if there is the nuance there. So at the beginning, you're selling the future of the business, and you're really selling the future of your business.
mm.
You
And
sell,
then when you sell to somebody else, you're selling the future of their business.
yes, that's
Mm,
it's sell the future versus sell their future.
mm, mm,
Which you could argue that you're selling the angel investors' future or their future too, but they're not because it's so early. They're not
mm.
going necessarily, this is going to be the next FAO Schwartz sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's kind of interesting when you think about the story behind the numbers. What are the numbers supposed to be doing?
Mm.
The intent is actually very importantly nuanced in both instances, aren't
Yeah.
they?
Yeah. Yeah. But in the end, it's all narrative, which is, I guess, the point that I make to my clients all the time, because my clients are often, so, now that I'm only writing copy, my clients often think that I just kind of turn up, bang some words into a keyboard and magic.
Yeah.
Whereas my approach to copywriting is very different. I start with data, because data tells us a narrative about the customer. So, how many people on the internet have talked about this particular problem versus that particular problem? Often, what my clients believe to be true about their target audience is not true, and the data will tell us. Because we have all these, we do what we call voice of customer data. We scrape the internet, we scrape their sales calls and their research, and basically pass all that data and come up with a table and say, well, you think these are the problems you're solving, but this is what the data's telling us. And look, it's up to them to decide ultimately what I say in their copy, but I will always come to them with a very, very clear data-backed recommendation as to what their strategy should be, and then I write from there.
But imagine, well, maybe I'll ask the question. When you play back that data and say, this is what your customer does or does not like or is resonating and all the rest of it, or even these are the type of people that are engaging with your business, does it sometimes not look like what your clients think?
Very, very often.
Tell me about that.
A lot. I have 100% been guilty of this, and I think it's totally normal. But y- business owners have a tendency to sell to themselves as opposed to sell to the person that actually needs their product or service. So the assumption is, well, this is what I want. This is how I want to be sold to. This is what interests me about my business. So talk about that. And when you run the voice of customer data process, what often falls out is, no, they're not the problems that will make you the most money. These are the problems that people are mentioning the most often. We also run a emotional filter over that data. So this is the number of mentions, but this is the type of language people are using. And we've got all these in copywriting, these particular, quite emotive phrases that we use and then we look out for in the customer data. And so we run this sort of additional analysis based on the strength of the language that the customer is using, and we can say to the client, okay, yeah, sure, they've mentioned that the competitor product is too sticky, but in reality, the thing that really, really annoys them is the dirt that attracts. and then you write your copy based on what really, really annoys them, because that's what people buy to solve a problem. And when you can demonstrate that there is you want to sell to the biggest gap, right? So where they want to be, what's the most, where is the greatest amount of tension, because that's what they're going to be most likely to buy and most likely to pay the most for. So in that example, so the competitor's product is too sticky, but what we're actually going to talk about in this copy is the dirt that attracts. Bigger gap is not the stickiness, it's the dirt. Am I making sense?
You're making complete sense, but I want to come back to what you said around the misconception about marketing and copywriting being fluffy and creative. Because I want, like I have to assume, I know you started in journalism, right? So I'm going to make an assumption, and it might not be right, but people would come into marketing or copywriting because they like the creative side of language and business, right? Like, I'm curious about how you go from that, young, naive, the world is shiny and I'm really creative and all of that thing, to being as like data driven. And, I want to talk about how you do this data and emotional overlay. I think that sounds really fascinating, particularly given in the world of AI, there's got to be some funky stuff that can happen there. But how do you go through that journey of starting off as a creative to what sounds to be kind of quickly into the data to this level of sophistication that you've just talked about? I don't know. I'm curious about that journey or spectrum, however it makes sense to explore that.
I think a lot of creatives stay creative. So there are agencies filled with true creatives who are fascinating individuals who, they stay on the creative side. I was always whenever I've worked on agency side, I've always been a copywriter who are a little bit less, they're not the art directors. They're, you partner with an art director and the copywriter is a little bit more boring. And I think so there are true creatives that enter marketing and stay creative. The journey that I've gone on probably reflects my personality more than it reflects the typical marketing journey, because I have progressively become more and more orientated towards the data, whether that's because I was just born a huge nerd, which is true, or because I ran my own businesses and I had to become super commercial and I had to make a lot of really logical decisions because the stakes were quite high because it became my money. I wonder why. It's a good question. How did I end up from starting out in publishing? I was in children's publishing. Like, every time a Harry Potter was released, I'd pull out my hair because I'd have to push all my launch dates back for kids' books.
Yeah.
I was in super creative. The authors that I was working with were mad. You don't become a children's author unless you're hyper creative and completely mad. To now where I'm at, which is this, very, very data driven copywriter. It's not a typical journey.
Yeah.
A lot of true creatives would find conversion copywriting, which is what I do, to be really, really boring. But yeah, I don't know. Little from column A, little from column B, probably.
So you just mentioned, you said, I had to become commercial. What do you mean by that? Because that's interesting, right? The creative people, I'm guessing, and I'm not talking about marketing and creative copywriters per se, but, you quite often hear about the struggling artist, right? And so, that in many creative fields, it can be very hard to make money. You said somewhere along your journey, the notes are you had to become commercial. Tell me about that.
I think it was actually probably around the time that I started working for the Burke Street Bakery guys. So that was my first taste of small business. I'd worked for a decade in big businesses. Even when I was in publishing, I worked for News Corp. I was HarperCollins Publishers, which was part of News Corp. So I'd always worked in big businesses. And the Burke Street Bakery was the first time that it became truly, it wasn't an investor's money on Wall Street in the US. It was these guys sitting in front of me and their families, and I really wanted to help them make money because that meant their kids could go to, private school and, they could buy new guitars and whatever else they wanted. And so I think that was when I really started to become hyper commercial. Every dollar started to make a difference, and I really started to track what, not just revenue, but profit. And it became really personal. And then, the story that I've told a million times is that I accidentally started a marketing agency in the delivery ward having my second son. And that once I was then responsible for rent and salaries and the client's revenue, and then I had to become hyper commercial. I needed to demonstrate every dollar delivered ROI to the client. I had to bring in profit every month to pay my staff who I loved. So
it's so interesting, right? Because not only were you responsible for your money, you were responsible for your staff's money and your client's money. So at Burke Street Bakery, it was about, yes, your money, but it was really about their money. How do I become an exceptional steward of their money so that every dollar they spend gets returned with interest? And when you accidentally started your marketing agency, it became you needed to be a steward for yourself, you need to be a steward of the money for your staff, and you needed to be a steward for your clients as well. A lot of responsibility.
To be perfectly clear, I'm a crappy steward of my own money, but I'm a very good steward of other people's money.
Well, it's so interesting because I was doing some thinking this morning. Everybody's best friend Chat, and I will attribute it to Chat, came up with this really, I think, powerful statement that I missed. Like I kind of went down a bit of a rabbit hole in terms of a few concepts. Yeah. So as I was going down a rabbit hole this morning, we do not need to unpack your personal finances, but I think, but I think actually what you and someone as works every day with CFOs, I can only imagine that rings true for them as well, right? But I think there was this statement in my kind of little rabbit hole this morning, and the statement that I missed, I overlooked it, and as I was transposing from one tool to another, it was this: business performance mirrors human performance. And I thought, boom, actually, that really articulates how I like to work, right? Because as you know, I like to really work on the human. Yes, I help CFOs, I help CEOs, execs, boards, all of those things. But fundamentally, and look, to be honest, really how this podcast and how the concept of the real math of business was formed, being 50% people, 50% math, is because every guest that has come on this podcast unanimously agrees that it is all about the people.
Yeah.
But actually, you can't run a business without money, right?
I've got the perfect example of that is when I accidentally founded the agency in the delivery room, having my son, I very quickly scaled to the point where I could not cope with the clients outstripped my capacity, the work, and I then started hiring people. And I think because I felt like they would be more understanding of my situation, having two small children at home and a husband that traveled a lot for work, because my husband was still traveling a lot in China at the time. I hired part-time working mums of young children. And so the agency, without me planning this, became 100% staffed by part-time working mums. And it was the most efficient workplace I have ever worked in, because those women had to be somewhere. They didn't have time to muck around. And we had to be really flexible with each other. My rule was that no one needed to be in the office, and this is back well before COVID, before, we discovered Zoom before it was cool, was that everyone had to be in the office on Tuesday for the weekly whip, which was mainly just bitching about our husbands and our children over coffee. And otherwise, you could work from wherever and we would just Zoom you in. And so we had client calls where we had to secretly change a number 3 poo-splosion on a newborn, We just rolled with the punches. Nothing stopped us because we had clients, they had deadlines, and we had babies, and we had 3:00 pickup. 2:30 was always hilarious. And we just had to make it work. And it was just because I think because I put the people first and I said to them, I trust you. The client work is non-deliverable. No one ever makes an excuse to the client. As we are
Yes.
ducks and we're furiously paddling underwater, but the client never sees that. However, how you paddle underwater is up to you. You're grown up. And I don't care so long as the client never sees.
Mm.
And we trusted each other, and it just built this culture and this workplace that was hyper efficient, and we loved each other. It's great. I mean, I don't know if they loved each other, but I loved all of them.
And I think that's so fascinating, isn't it? Because, yeah, I mean, we could go down so many rabbit holes, the work from home, the work, part-time parent, part-time working mums, all of those things. But you and I both have been working mothers before, and you have to be supremely organized to do all of the things at a reasonable level of quality, right? Whether that be parenting, work, or
And if
wiping, or
people
whatever
want
the
to
thing.
work and they want to deliver quality, they will find a way.
And remove the female and parent part of that. If you
Yep.
were to just take that phrase that you just said, if you want quality, people will find a way. That is actually all you want in your workforce, right?
Yep.
Just that.
I would love for more dads to be looking after their children and taking care of their elderly aunts. And, it just so happens that the examples that we have of that tend to come from working women. But it's true of absolutely everybody in the workforce. Everybody's struggling with something, and good people who want to deliver good work will find a way. You have to trust them.
And I'm reflecting on the client I was with earlier this week, the exec team I was working with, and they're working through their CEO is going to move on in a couple of years, and so we're working through a CEO succession strategy with them, and that is certainly the, if I could summarize how I look at them, it is they've got good people who want to do good work, and I'm confident that no matter what happens in the future, they will find a way. And man, they are an executive team like every other business at the moment that is just having life thrown at them. It is not perfect. It is not a straight line. People are away unexpectedly. Staff are away unexpectedly. They're dealing with all of the realities of what it means to be in business today, right? But what I can hand on hearts say, after I've worked with them for quite a number of years now, but I just happened to have spent Monday and Tuesday with them this week, they will find a way. And I think if, we haven't really gone really out and talked about the context, the market context, the economy at the moment, we don't know what's coming at us. But if you've got the right people around you and you have the trust and confidence that they will find a way, that's kind of all you need.
And you do need a culture of performance. So I think that's why it worked for me and it works for your client. I know a little bit about them. They have a culture of performance. This is where we're headed, guys. That's not negotiable. We don't drop quality. We don't drop the ball on the client. We don't deliver late unless you've got a really bloody good excuse. But this is the expectation. Work out how to meet it. I trust you. I have faith in your competence. I'll support you if you've got an emergency and you need to be out of the office, we've got your back.
Yes.
That's you need the culture of performance and you need high standards, but then let the people work it out. And I think that's the math. The math has to come in this is the level of performance that I can expect from you, and that's fair, that's data backed. This is how we've built those projections up. This is the level of financial support I'm going to give you to get there. These are the resources, but this is the level. And then we build a culture to let all the chaos occur, which occurs in every workplace and in everybody's life, particularly now, and we'll support each other. But the culture of performance is fundamental to delivery.
So, I wish we had more time to talk because we're kind of coming to the end, but I want to just pick up on the energy of what you just said, but also the content of what you just said. I remember having a conversation with you. It was one of those friend conversations that turned it into a business conversation. You went, I don't want to coach people. I could do it, but I don't want to. Just want to write the stuff, Except you have just emphatically talked about how important taking care of your people and culture is. So I'm really curious in the work that you do. And also, you are one of the smartest people I know, but you're also one of the most caring, loving, and kind people I know. So I know you have a good heart. I know that because I'm very, very close with you. But I'm just really curious about how you run your business now and how you interact with your clients now. How does that people buy your services because they want an outcome, and they typically want a financial performance outcome.
Yeah.
Right? But you are not. How do you balance the ruthless focus on data and I'm asking how you personally do this. How do you take your clients through that journey of that ruthless focus on performance and, breaking bad news like, sorry, this is why your business is not working because actually you're talking too much about yourself, or what you think is true is definitely not true. Like, how do you take people on that personal people journey whilst knowing how ruthlessly you focus on data and numbers?
I think I always frame up bad news in terms of intent. So I think by the time we get to the point where I'm telling them, hey, you're off base, this is the data, this is what it's telling you, and I'm about to strip all of those I words out of your copy and turn them into, customer statements. I've already built the relationship to the point that they know that my intention is in service to them. My business only works if their business works, because they're not going to refer me and give me good Google reviews and etc. if it doesn't work for them. And I tend to attract, and it's probably because there's so many F-bombs in my LinkedIn posts, but I tend to attract people like me who want to get to the outcome, but are fairly relational. So they understand when I deliver that news, they understand I'm doing it for them. And there's even, I wrote a LinkedIn post that's about to go live, that'll probably go live before this podcast does, where I said, will my website roasts hurt your feelings? I've got a product called a website roast, and I frame it up like that because it is such a quick audit of the website that it feels like I'm roasting them. Like, a comedy roast. It feels
great.
like someone's attacking you personally.
Oh,
and I frame it up like that because it sometimes I will hurt your feelings, but it stings a little, but it's in service to your long-term good. So
honestly, I'm getting all sorts of feelings through my body, knowing the vulnerability it takes to put out a website to start with.
Yeah.
And then to have an expert roast it. Oh.
Well, you were really lucky that you just went, do what you need, don't tell me about it, and it just went live.
Yeah. You don't tell my secrets. telling all of my secrets. Well, but I guess that's the relational side, right? And we are lucky that we've got a decade worth of relational experience. And I do always know that you have got my back. So that's probably where that, unequivocal trust comes from, that I know you would never do anything intentionally or otherwise that you think might hurt me. So that's probably where that comes from. And I guess maybe what your expertise is yes, we might have a decade of that. And so I can take that approach. Maybe you're actually exceptional building that level of trust very quickly.
I think I don't like to, I'm an 80s child of, 80s parents. So saying I'm good at X is uncomfortable for me. But I think I am quite good at building rapport quite quickly. I think most of my clients will be able to tell fairly quickly that I really care about their business and I want the best for them. And ultimately, they get to, there have been clients that have pushed back on my recommendations. They're just recommendations at the end of the day. And I will always write what they want, but I may bring it up in months' time when their website doesn't perform as I I don't pretend to not like to say I told you so.
So tell me, Stace, how do I learn if someone's listening to this and they want to learn more about how they can be roasted and learn more about the amazing work that you do? What is the best way for people to find you?
Jump onto ClevrCopy.com. That's CLEVR copy.com. I deliberately misspelled that because at the time it was like in the days of the dropping a
Val?
a vowel. I was just about to say consonant and I was like, no, that's wrong. What's the other one? Vowel.
Coming from the copywriter, coming from the language expert. So how do people find you, Stace?
You can jump onto ClevrCopy.com, CLEVR copy.com, or go to Stacey Ellis Fisher, that's Ellis Fisher with no C, at Instagram or LinkedIn.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I mean, you have had such a breadth of experience in actually a fairly short period of time. You have done all of the things. And you seem to, and there's such an intangible quality. You've obviously given us a really nice view of how the people and the math must and does work together really effectively in all of those different experiences. But there is something intangible about how you communicate that actually straddles both. And I'm fascinated to see that kind of continue to come to life, because there's some gold there. And obviously that's why you're so successful. But this has been so enlightening and helpful. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
And what a great chat with Stace. This leads us right into our listener question. And if you want to submit a listener question, you can now email us at realmathofbusiness@gmail.com, or you can leave a comment on YouTube or Spotify and we'll hopefully get it into a future episode. This week's listener question for this episode is from Francis. Hi, Alena. I just finished listening to your episode with Lindsay and I thought it was fascinating to learn about having to take on the role of CEO without really directing herself towards that. I was wondering, as you've gone up the hierarchy in different businesses, how have you tackled more advanced challenges as they arise with positions of higher responsibility? And what would you tell your younger self about this? Best, Francis. That is a really great question, Francis. And thank you for listening, for starters. Isn't Lindsay amazing? And I do think it's fascinating, sort of the accidental move up into the role of CEO. I think I shared in a previous podcast the ego that I had at a relatively young age in my corporate career. And I think in terms of your question around tackling more advanced challenges, I think I have learned that I've had to shed that ego, because the challenges are just so much bigger than me and so much bigger than I have ever had the capability to solve for. So I think that in terms of sort of a blanket answer, in terms of how do you tackle advanced challenges, you need to shed your ego. You have to surrender to the reality that you will just not always be able to solve the challenges that are presented to you. And higher responsibility, bigger problems. Yeah, more money, more problems, more responsibility, more problems. One of the things that really jarred me, and this is probably going alongside with my ego reflection, when I first moved to the US, I was 25, so I was still pretty young. Probably thought I was, all that, and I was going in at a manager-ish level into the US. And I remember one of the meeting my junior staff, the people that worked for me, and I remember them being so gung-ho about their careers. So they were juniors. We call it them accountants or accountant ones. But they had all of these big, bright ideas about their career. And they were like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this. And I remember thinking, chill out. Like, just chill. Like, no big deal. You'll get there when you get there. Just do what you do now and, we'll figure out the rest later. And I actually thought there was a bit of arrogance and silly ambition associated with what this junior person was saying. Well, I'm not sure if this just comes again from a bit of age and shedding that ego, but the actual answer to your question is intention and reflection. It's being really, really intentional. That was the thing that changed the game entirely for my career, was actually being intentional about it. I remember, and again, back in the US, being asked for the very first time by my performance partner, Alena, where do you see yourself in 5 years? But I had no idea. I had never been asked that question. And do you know what I said? I have no idea, but not here. That was my response to my boss at the time. Now, fortunately, he was a very gracious man. So he did not take that with any level of disrespect, nor did I mean it with any level of disrespect. But I think what I have learned over the years, and certainly in the last 6 years, the thing that changes the games for very, very senior leaders are two things: intention and reflection. So, and that's what led me to create what we call the catalyst equation, which is growth equals intention plus action plus reflection. Because everybody, every senior leader gets to where they are because of the actions that they are taking. They just do the things, but at some point they get to a point in their career where that's not enough. Action is not enough because they don't know the right actions to take, and the actions themselves need to change. The classic one is the doing versus the leading, right? So we created the catalyst equation because we realized that the things that really change the game at that top executive level are the two things that happen in the space, and that is intention. What do I want? What do I want short, medium, long term? What is my sort of action intention, but what is my inner intention? And then also that guides the right approach to things. But then it's the reflection. What did I learn? What did I love about that? What did I hate from it? Where did I fail? Right? Those two things are actually the growth activators to doing successful action. So I would say that being intentional is probably the most important element to that, to tackle more advanced challenges as you get more senior in your career. I think the other things that go alongside that, so sure, people are not intentional and they don't reflect because they have lack of time, and actually those things don't need time, they need space. But the other two sort of precursors that you need in order to tackle those more advanced challenges more effectively is you need to have a high level of self-worth and a high level of self-confidence. So you have to have an inner belief that you've got this, right? And so with that mindset, with that positive mindset that I've got this, you can be very intentional in a really positive way. You can reflect not from a place of criticism, from a place of growth. So I would just say, use the catalyst equation: intention plus action plus reflection equals growth. And that works most effectively, in those higher levels that you're talking about. But make sure you've got the space, you've got the self-worth, and you've got the self-confidence to really amplify that equation. I hope that's helpful, Frances. That's a great question. And I want to thank you for listening to The Real Math of Business with Alena Bennett. If you've liked this episode, remember to subscribe for more content and stay on top of the real math of business. I've been Alena Bennett. Thanks so much for listening.